you could have a complete draft of your novel before the new year. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly just what steps you need to take to be able to draft your novel in just 3 months. This is a copy of my first draft of my debut novel, and in this video we're going to chat about how you can get started to write your novel in just 3 months, so that you can also be holding a copy of your first draft in your hands. Even if you're a beginner at writing, it is totally possible to write your first draft within 3 months. But first, we need to set our expectations straight, so let's head into my office. But let's be real, writing a polished draft in 3 months is no easy feat. Trust me, I've tried. But when I was finally able to accept that my first draft of my debut novel would not be my final draft, that's when I really started to see progress on my writing goals. I highly recommend reading Anne Lamott's essay called Shitty First Drafts in her book Bird by Bird in order to get a sense of the mindset that you should be going into when you write the first draft of your novel. Also, before we get into good stuff, I'm super excited. This is actually the first sponsorship on this channel. I am currently taking Readsy's How to Write a Novel course, and this course is intended to help you write your novel, your first draft, within 101 days, within 3 months without getting stuck. And honestly, after writing my final book, this is a totally achievable goal. It took me so much longer than it needed to write my first draft. So I am so excited to dig into this course and share my first impressions with you along the way in future videos, because I need to get working on book 2 of the new Grad Magic series. All right, let's get into the 3 simple steps that you're going to need. So we're going to be talking about preparation and planning. We're going to be talking about the writing and outlining process, and we're going to talk about the mindset that you need to be a published author. Preparation and planning. First of all, if you're watching this, you've decided you're going to be an author, you've decided you're going to write a book, congratulations, that's huge. But you need to plan and you need to prepare. We're not just going to wing it this time. We are going to have a plan so that your book can also be on the shelves for readers. And actually, that's something that I really do like about the course, is that if you sign up for the Readsy course now, you'll have access to the prep sessions before the first cohort starts on September 2nd. And the instructor compares writing a book to running a marathon, because neither of those is no small feat. It's an achievable goal, sure, but you don't just wake up one day and decide to run a marathon. You might wake up one day and decide to write a book, but that's not enough. We need to prepare. So let's talk about how we're going to do that. First off, we need to get even more specific of the fact that you're going to write a book. We need to decide what days you're going to work on your novel, what time you're going to work on your novel, and actually we need to decide on the focus of each session for your novel. And you also need to figure out your environment. During your writing sessions, are you going to work from home? Are you going to work from a nice cafe? Are you going to work from a library? Are you going to switch it up a bit so you get that spark of new scenery? I need you to decide on all these aspects. So once you've chosen your environment, once you've picked your days and time, and once you have decided on the focus of your writing sessions, for example, outlining, planning, thinking, brainstorming, once you decided that, I need you to set even more goals. And what do I mean by this? You can decide on a daily word count goal. You can decide on how many days a week you're going to work on your novel. You can decide on how many words a week you want versus a day. And so for me, I got way too hung up on the word count goal that some days of when I wanted to make 500 words, but I wasn't feeling it, it wasn't productive, because I would just be sitting there being like, haha, I'm writing, this is 500 words, I don't know what's happening in the scene, this character is crazy, blah, 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 blah. It didn't really work for me. But what did work for me was deciding how much time I was spending on my novel and choosing whether that time was brainstorming time, outlining time, or actually getting words on the page time. And don't worry, we're going to talk about how to get those words on the page in this video. When I was writing this book, I would sit down and I would say, okay, it's 7 p.m. I'm sitting here until 9 p.m. I'm working on this novel, no exceptions, no distractions, etc. And if you do struggle with creating your own structure, the Readsy course will help you with that, because it gives you a day-by-day action plan to make sure that, where is it? Where is it? Okay, to make sure that you get to achieve this by the end of the course. Okay, now that we've talked about step 1, preparation and planning, you've got that covered, right? We're moving on to step 2, which is the writing process and outlining. I want to talk about your main character first. Setting, plot, atmosphere, all that stuff is cool. And if you have that locked in, great, you're one step ahead. But we really need to talk about your main character, and you need to know what is the most exciting part of their story. That is where you should write your novel. And also, if you were describing this book to someone else, how would you describe it in 2 sentences? Like, how would you describe this to your best friend that you really wanted to read this book? And what does your main character want? And why can't they have it? We hear that a lot, right? Like, those words might land empty to you, so I'm gonna frame it a little bit differently. I want you to think about that friend that you have, that you know so well, but they tend to make some very questionable decisions. But at the same time, you're not surprised. You're just not surprised that this friend would react this way because you just know them so well. You know what they're going to do based on how they see the world. I need you to know your main character that well because they are going to drive the story. When you brainstorm today, I want you to think of writing a few journal entries from different time periods in your character's life just to get a sense of who they are, because you as the author, I don't really want you to be surprised by your character's reactions. The reader might, but if you know them so well, that's gonna make your story have that like secret sauce and that secret spark. And we have to talk about outlining. I'll be honest with you, I am not the best at outlining. I am definitely a pantser. I just wanted to wing it, and after winging it, I wanted my first draft to be like this beast of a novel that I could edit no problem, right? I tried that. It didn't work. I had to throw so much crap out because I don't even know like what I was writing. So if you're like me and it's not really your style to do a super outline of things, I do recommend making a really, really mini outline scene by scene. Like literally, scene 1 is 2 sentences. This happens and then this happens. Scene 2, this happens, then this happens. If you have that very basic outline, spend some time thinking about it, maybe this weekend or this week, then it will make writing your first draft a lot easier. You have a direction that you're going, and then it's much more likely and much more quicker to head towards the path of a published novel. So make a mini outline of just what happens in a scene and what is the chain reaction that causes the next thing. And remember, when you're thinking about this, try not to think about it too much in terms of plot, but think about it into like what situation are you throwing your character in and how are they going to react to that. And I do want to highlight that like the first draft, you don't need to be super restrictive with yourself, and we'll get into that later, but it's about play, it's about having fun, it's about seeing what works and what doesn't, but having that microstructure, I promise you, is going to save you so much time in the long run. It's going to save you such a headache when editing in the long run that I highly, highly recommend it. Even if it feels like initially you just want to get to writing and you feel like you're wasting time outlining, try it. Okay, so we talked a little about writing, we talked about a little bit outlining, we are going to talk about how to get words on the page, but first I want you to clean your environment. If you're working from home, I want you to set that up for success. Or if you're going to a cafe or library, I want you to decide what times you're going to that library. Make sure you pack, I don't know, your laptop chargers, snacks, everything that you need for going into an outside writing environment. Look at the plan you made in step 1. When is the next time you're going writing? Is it today? Is it tomorrow? Is it next week? When? And then you've made that basic outline, right? You're going to sit in the chair. You're going to look at that basic outline and you're going to write. And I have a pro tip for you. This is your first draft. Actually, this applies to any draft. You don't need to start writing with the opening scene right away. If that feels really daunting and really challenging to you right now, I encourage you to write a scene in the middle of the outline. Like if there's like one scene in your head that you can just picture so well, write that scene first. I know for me personally, I really love writing dialogue. It's not something that I find challenging. So on those days where I'd have low motivation, low energy, I would just write a conversation between 2 characters, and I wouldn't even waste time on punctuation, dialogue tags, quotation marks, because I just wanted to get the conversation on the page. So that brings us to our next step, third and final step, which is the author mindset that you need to have when writing your novel. Firstly, the first part of your novel is your first draft, and we are letting go of perfectionism. During our first draft, we don't care about spelling, we don't care about punctuation, we don't care about formatting, we don't care about fancy similes or metaphors. That can come later. The editing process as a whole can be a lot of fun, but during the first draft, we are just typing, we are getting words on page, we are using our basic outline to just crank things out, and then we can look at it later and we can revise it, we can shape it, we can sculpt it. But one of my favorite writing quotes, and I don't know who says this, but I hear it a lot, is that you can't edit a blank page. So congratulations on the planning, congratulations on the preparing, but let's get those words on the page for your allotted time that you set for your writing goals, and do it the next day, do it the next day, do it the next day. All that matters in the long run to get to a final product, is that you are consistent with your writing habit. And to be honest with you, when I finished my first draft, I felt like throwing up because I knew there was so much more work to be done. I wasn't even confident in the direction I was taking the story because I knew I wasn't prepared enough ahead of time. Like, it was a very unsettling feeling. So when I go into writing book 2, I'm not doing that. I am starting with a basic outline. I am following it, and it can change over time, because finishing the first draft of your novel will make you realize that you can then write the second draft, the third draft, the fourth draft, and lead you closer to the path of publishing and becoming an author. And I'm not going to lie to you. It's almost like writing a book is hard or something, right? Who knew? Like, it's physically, when you think about it, you're just sitting and you're typing. Like, and so when I think about that, that just sounds so easy. But there's so much going on in our brains of like, what happens next? Is this good enough? Would this be appealing for other people to read? Will other people like it? Am I good enough? There's all this clutter that goes around in our brain. So another part of the author mindset is I want you to let go of any thoughts you have of, are you good enough? Are you talented enough? Is this even worth it? Like, you've already decided you want to be an author. I want you to get rid of all that stuff. Like, if you're thinking it, that's fine, that's normal, but I want you to just picture like grabbing those thoughts from your head and chucking them out the window, okay? And instead, we're gonna grab some new thoughts, and those new thoughts are gonna be, wouldn't it be so cool if in 1 year's time I had a published novel out there, right? And I think 1 year is realistic. If you spend 3 months on your first draft, 3 months on your second draft, 3 months on your fourth draft, and 3 months on your fifth draft, I think having your published book out there is actually very, very realistic. So again, another mindset exercise. I want you to grab your notebook, and I want you to think what your life is going to look like 1 year from now. Like, what are you proud of in terms of your writing goals? What have you accomplished? What have you blown yourself away at? Like, what are you just like astonished that you actually did the thing, right? I want you to write that down. And then I want you to write down what life is looking like in 3 years. Have you wrote 1 book, 2 books, 3 books? Have you wrote 1 book and are working on a different, really like giant book? Like, what does your life look like in 3 years? And I want you to just dream about this for a while. Okay, good, right? You're good enough. It's done. You've got it. If you can picture yourself being a published author, that means those I'm not good enough thoughts, they're not true. So we're chucking them out the window. And then after you've had a bit of time to sit in dreamland, I need you to ask yourself, look at that 1 year plan. And I want you to ask yourself, is it realistic? Are these goals realistic? And are they within your control? If the answer is yes to both of those questions, I highly recommend printing out a free habit tracker online like this one. This is the one I use. And figuring out what the daily and monthly steps are that you need to take in order to reach whatever you wrote down on that 1 year page. Totally doable for you to become a published author. If you found these tips helpful, please give this video a thumbs up, and do not forget to check out this video on how to actually write consistently every day. It is packed with high value tips to help you stay on track. And also, don't forget to check out the Reedsy course linked below. It's full of very practical, actionable tips to help you write your novel within 3 months. I will be joining along with you during the September cohort, and I can't wait to see you there. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.